Welcome into the Thunder basketball universe. We are recording today's episode on Tuesday, February 11th. So that means the Thunder has played 6 games here in February. That also means that All-Star Weekend, it's right there on the horizon, right around the corner. But OKC has 2 more games until that All-Star break. They face the Miami Heat on Wednesday and then head out to Minnesota for one quick game on the second night of a back-to-back to face off against the Timberwolves. But today, we need to recap February because it has been just 11 days, just 6 games, but boy, has a lot happened for the Thunder in this stretch.
It's been an excellent 6 games.
Yeah.
I mean, about as perfect as you can draw up. This team has led by 20 in each one of these games. They've won by at least a dozen in each of the games.
Yeah.
And they've done it with guys coming in and out of the lineup. It has been a really impressive all-around performance.
We've seen the return of Chet Holmgren into the lineup for the Thunder. He's played 2 games now for Oklahoma City since his return from that right iliac wing fracture. We've also seen Aaron Wiggins absolutely explode offensively. He put up a career-high 41 points a few games ago and then followed it up with 8 made threes, which is also a career high. So we've seen a lot from him recently. And then just last night in this building, the Thunder just absolutely lit it up. They shot the lights out. I'm really surprised the lights still work today because they made a Thunder record 27 made threes in their game last night, which is insane.
Our producer, Matt Bishop, has been busy working in this place just to get all the electronics back going after that display last night because the Thunder red hot from the 3-point line and more a product of the type of offense this team has been running this whole season, but particularly here in this month of February, where the shots that were being created were such high quality that they had a great chance of going in. During some of these earlier games on this winning streak, the 6-game streak, those types of shots have been there. They haven't gone in at the same rate. Last night was a great example of what this team can look like when they're really rolling and the shots are falling.
I want to get into that a little bit more, and we'll get into it certainly later because we need to talk about the Thunder's offense over this stretch of February. We need to talk about the Thunder's defense over this stretch of February, both of which have been phenomenal. But first, we're going to do a nice segment of Stat of the Week. I should say, this week, we're talking about this stat because we're going to include the first 11 days here in February. So really stat to start the month is really what this is. But Nick, I'll let you go first. What is your stat?
Okay, well, this stat really is a season-wide stat, but it's something that is only possible because of what's happened here over the last 6 games. And it's something that our great Matt Bishop, our producer, and I were talking about right before the show. He brought it up, and he was doing like a little quiz. And that number is 13.5. And that is currently the Thunder's net rating on the season. And for those who don't know, that's the points better than your opponent per 100 possessions.
And Nick, you stopped, but I think you should add the additional context of where that ranks historically in the league.
Yeah, if the season were to end today, that would be the best net rating in the history of the NBA. Just above the 1996 Chicago Bulls, better than the 1970-71 Milwaukee Bucks, who are historically great, better than those Warriors teams that the one that won 73 games. All of those teams, this net rating would be better than those groups.
A lot of people think a good net rating means you need to have an electric offense, right? I think it tends to trend in that direction when people think about net rating, but this is a perfect combination of 2 amazing storms happening for the Thunder. One, their defense has been consistently strong all season long. The number 1 defense in the league by a pretty large margin. Like they're very well ahead of the pack in terms of their defensive rating. But to your point, recently the offense has absolutely exploded for the Thunder during this stretch of February. They're putting up massive offensive numbers in terms of points, but also scoring differential and their ability to just outscore people by double digits, lead by 20 or more points. All of those things go together to put together a 13.5 net rating.
Yeah, there's basically a bit of a script that these games keep following, and it's not like intentionally designed by the Thunder in any way, but first quarters, the Thunder is getting off to a double-digit lead, kind of wrestling control away in the first 5 or 6 minutes of the game, that middle stage of the first quarter. There always seems to be a nice extended run by the Thunder when they really are getting into the rhythm of the game. And from there, then the second unit kind of picks up where the starters left off. We saw in Memphis against the team that is number 2 in the West right now. The Thunder was able to lead by 17 at halftime.
Yep.
And, besides one little stretch where the Grizzlies put some game pressure on them, OKC never looked back. That's been the formula that's worked night in and night out, leaning on the defense early to get the offense going, and then kind of everybody feeling a rhythm as the game's gone on.
You brought this up earlier, and I want to talk about it now because I think it's even more important when you put it in the context of how the Thunder's able to be so successful with a historically good 13.5 net rating, is the fact that they've been able to do this all while not being fully healthy, right? Yeah. I mean, throughout February, Chet Holmgren's only played 2 games. The Thunder's played 6. Yeah. And then Cason Wallace has been out for a large part of those games. Alex Caruso missed a couple. Lou Dort missed a couple. So it's just like, you got this kind of a fluid lineup for the Thunder. A lot of different guys have had to step up. Guys like Aaron Wiggins, who we will talk about later in the show. But different guys have had to step in. But they've done so and kept everything afloat. And as a matter of fact, growing and keeping pushing forward for the Thunder to put together such a consistent and historically good number.
Okay, what's your stat this week?
All right. I'm interested to see if you get this one. My stat is 52.5.
Okay, this is a tough one because there's so many different things that this can be. This could be the Thunder's shooting percentage here in the month of February.
It could.
Or this past week. It could be their rebounding numbers because that's been really good. Could be their points in the paint numbers.
It could. Could be stocks.
That would be a lot of them. And also the half would be curious. Really, but yeah, what is it?
It's rebounds.
It's rebounds.
It is total rebounds for the Thunder throughout their 6 games here in February. 52.5 is a league-leading mark by Oklahoma City. This is huge because throughout the season, in totality, the Thunder is about middle of the pack in terms of total rebounds per game. And 52.5 is a lot of rebounds.
That's plenty.
Okay,
yeah.
So I wanted to bring this up because over the course of this stretch, we've seen the Thunder pull down 70 rebounds against the Sacramento Kings here at home. You remember that game? That was a historic game. And then
for a lot of reasons.
For so many reasons. But then in Memphis, the Thunder pulled down 21 offensive rebounds, had 32 second chance points. And so I'm just like noticing this trend here over the course of February where OKC's had these really large offensive numbers, some really great offensive rebounding numbers as well. And I asked Coach Dagnall about it, and he pointed out a couple of things where he said, we've been chipping away at this kind of quietly for the past year. Because if you flash back to this time last year, the Thunder, it was kind of a weak point for the Thunder in their rebounding numbers, right? And they recognize this is an area of growth for us, so we're going to work on it. We're going to work on sending more guys, first of all, and then we're also going to work on blocking out and creating these opportunities. Well, now, these guys have been working on that and getting better at that consistently over the course of a year. Then you sprinkle in a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein. You sprinkle in a monster like Kenrich Williams, who's just out there scrapping for every second chance he can get. And now all of a sudden, you've got this perfect storm of guys flying in for offensive rebounds. You've got Isaiah Hartenstein, a 7-footer, who is not only getting his own share of rebounds, but is also taking all of the attention for everybody who wants to keep him off the glass. So he's got like 3 guys blocking him out any given defensive possession, which allows guys like Lou Dort, Aaron Wiggins, Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso to fly in there undefended and go pick up an offensive rebound.
It's remarkable to just think about how this has sort of been reverse engineered by the Thunder, not necessarily intentionally, but out of necessity, that a lot of this growth and the principles that they're attacking on the offensive glass came and originated from when they've played small ball. That the Thunder was looking for advantages when they were small. One of them was their speed and their quickness to attack the offensive glass, to come in, rush, kind of tag the top side of whoever the defender is there boxing out, and be able to grab those balls that are flying over the heads of the defensive players who are boxing out. So those principles remain the same for guys like Lou Dort and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Aaron Wiggins and Cason Wallace. All of those guys averaging, right around 1 offensive rebound per game or 0.8, 0.9. So nothing individually to write home about, but when you add those up game after game after game, in addition to the 3 a night that Isaiah Hartenstein is getting, then you're starting to really cook with gas.
Yeah, it's paper cuts, right? It's just like a bunch of little paper cuts, and then suddenly, all of a sudden, you've dominated this game by just one possession here, a couple of possessions here. And then you add those extra possessions in with the stops that the Thunder's getting defensively. And all of a sudden you get these wide margins in just field goal attempts.
Right.
And the Thunder leads the league in this category. And they've had multiple games where they've had 30 or more field goal attempts than their opponent, which is just insane to think about. That means they have 30 more chances to put points on the board than their opponent. It's winning the possession battle.
Yeah, the Thunder is attempting 7 more shots per game this season than their opponent. And you just think about the games and what they often come down to, not recently for the Thunder, but they often come down to 2 or 3 possessions at the end of a game. Well, the Thunder is not even allowing that to be the case because they're getting so many more shots on goal than the opposing team.
Yeah.
One other aspect of the rebounding that I wanted to touch on, because it's a great point by you, are the tap outs. So it's not just that the guys are coming in and grabbing them, but it's this coordinated effort by Jay Will, who is a great, physical, instinctual player, not the biggest center on the floor, but he is always in the right spot to tap those long rebounds out.
Right.
And the Thunder has had great floor spacing to make sure that when those tap outs are happening, the ball is, cordoned off from any potential fast breaks for the other team, and they're in position to be able to actually receive those tap outs.
Yeah, they're not going in there thinking, I'm going to grab this with 2 hands and maybe go up with it. They're just, I need to keep this possession alive, give our guys a chance. And everyone's hanging around with just enough time to be able to make those second chance opportunities. And it's really cool to see these guys and just their hustle, the scrap, the energy. And mind you, the Thunder, where this really showed up big time was in their game against the Memphis Grizzlies. Yep. That game was on the second night of a back-to-back. They were just at Paycom Center the night before that. They fly out to Memphis. They take on the Grizzlies. And the Grizzlies are typically a team that thrives in those second chance opportunities. They thrive on the offensive rebounds. And the Thunder completely flipped the script on the second night of a back-to-back when you didn't have Chet Holmgren in the lineup and you're down Lou Dort in that game. And just there was just so many different, scenarios and moments of adversity that the Thunder just completely washed away.
You called out Kenrich Williams specifically.
Yeah.
In that game, there was a moment that will just forever be etched into my brain, which is on one possession, there were 3 consecutive times that Kenrich was fighting on the offensive glass, tapping the ball around. Eventually, after 3 missed shots by the Thunder, I think grabs the offensive rebound for himself.
Yeah.
And he's kind of grabbing, he's looking back towards the Thunder bench, not intentionally, it's just, where he was facing to grab the ball. And he says, "That's my ball." And it was just such a perfect encapsulation of the competitor that Kenrich Williams is. And, he wasn't, I think, at 100% of his capabilities.
Yeah.
Last season, he had been dealing with some injuries, earlier in the year and didn't quite hit the ground running.
Mm-hmm.
This year, he's in a much better place and has been extremely effective for the Thunder. The first 2 or 3 months of the season, his offensive rating was like 140, which is just off the charts insane. Yeah. And so he has really done a nice job of being that small ball power forward center for this team in certain situations and playing with the tenacity to do it.
Yeah, he's just such a tone setter for the energy for OKC on both ends of the floor. It's just, you love the attitude that he brings to the game, right? Just so much energy. All right, we're talking about the Thunder's defense here and their rebounding numbers. Well, we talked about their offensive rebounds too, but let's start with the Thunder's defense. 6-0 here in February. Yeah. All of these wins have been by 12 or more points, which ties that longest streak of, the longest such streak this season. The other team that did that, that was the Thunder.
Yeah.
That was also the Thunder in their first 6 games. Yeah. So it's very impressive by OKC. We'll see if they can beat their own record here. But they have been on a tear offensively, averaging 132 points per game over the month of February. Mind you, to your point, you brought this up, Nick. The first 4 games of this 6-game winning streak, the Thunder was at home here inside of Paycom Center. They were getting good looks, but they weren't really shooting the ball particularly well, especially from the 3-point line. And yet they're putting up these incredibly large offensive numbers. And a lot of that has to do with some great individual scoring, guys like Wiggins, but also the Thunder's ability to just create other ways to score the basketball.
Well, the story of the whole season has been this historic Thunder defense, and they've got far and away the best defensive rating. That where their defensive rating is compared to the middle of the pack in the NBA this year would be an all-time record in terms of how far apart they are ahead of the median net or defensive rating. But the secondary story of the season is what the Thunder has done offensively since the start of calendar year 2025.
Yep.
OKC's offense was still top 10 the first 2.5 months of the season, but starting in January, this Thunder offense has been number 1 in the NBA. And so you're now marrying the number 1 defense that's held consistent all season long to the number 1 offense in the NBA. And that is where, that's why we're seeing these continual 20-plus point blowouts and double-digit wins.
For those who might not have seen the trend, what has changed for the Thunder from, November to December or October to December, from now January to February?
I would say this is what Mark Daignault has sort of reported to us, is just more acclimation of how this team can really utilize the skills of a player like Isaiah Hartenstein.
Yep.
And, guys like Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, some of these players, they're shooting from the outside, coming back to the mean. Isaiah Joe has had some great shooting nights. Everybody, kind of the first 2.5 months of the season, didn't shoot the ball to what they know that they're capable of from behind the 3-point line. Well, all of that's evening back out. And so what we're seeing is a product of maybe some more normal percentages coming from guys behind the line, but also that you can't deny that some of that has to do with just the comfort that this team has now, 50 games into the season, about what this group is really going to look like, and how to play off of each other. Hartenstein, Caruso, these guys who have evolved and changed, they're all different players than they were last season. And it took a little time as this group continues to evolve to figure out how all those pieces fit together. More great challenges with Chet Holmgren back in the fold now too.
I was just about to point that out because you mentioned, we're month 5 into the season right now, and the Thunder, in month 4 was starting to get acclimated to each other and, really get comfortable and settle into a rhythm that allowed their offense to start picking up. Well, now you add another variable into the fray with Chet Holmgren, who's now healthy and getting reintegrated into the lineup. And now you have the same process of everyone getting acclimated, getting comfortable, Chet Holmgren getting comfortable as well. And Coach Daignault gave him a lot of credit in his first game back. He said, Chet did a great job of just being a really good teammate in this game. He didn't try to insert himself. He just let the game come to him. It didn't just kind of come and mess up what we had rolling. Because the Thunder, they were doing really hot up to that point too. And Chet, obviously an all-star caliber player, but it's going to take some time for everybody to get reintegrated and learn each other. And the first 4 months of the season is a good example of what that looks like.
And you can already expect some of these headlines and external talking heads to refer to reintegrating Chet or integrating Hartenstein or any of these people as something negative or threatening.
A scary thing.
But this is invigorating. In an 82 game regular season, first of all, Chet Holmgren is an amazing player, but these are the experiences. What we're seeing, and we'll talk about Aaron Wiggins here too, these developments that happen over the course of the season where your team is tested and challenged over the course of the year, this is what really lights up and invigorates a team, and it helps them not plateau during the year, but actually helps them elevate and just continue to take steps up that mountain to challenge themselves, to test themselves, to stretch themselves. In the long run of this year, all of this stuff, even if it looks like a step backwards at some point, is going to be so incredible for this group.
You know who's a great example of that? Aaron Wiggins.
Aaron Wiggins, there you go.
That was a perfect transition right there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Aaron Wiggins' February that he's having right now, because he's a big reason why the Thunder's been able to put up the numbers that they've been putting up. Aaron is averaging 23 points per game, 6 rebounds in the 6 games that the Thunder's played here in February. Obviously, career high numbers for a month for Aaron. But he's had games where he's put up 41 points. That game against the Sacramento Kings, an explosive outing for Aaron. But then he also had that game against the Grizzlies where he shot 8 made threes. That was a career high for Aaron as well. All the while, it's been very functional, right? It's very functional offense for Aaron. He's just doing what Aaron Wiggins already does, right? The system
with slightly more aggression
and slightly more volume, just like a touch more, because guys have been out. He's had extended opportunities, extended minutes, and then suddenly all those backdoor cuts, he's making all of those, and then suddenly the spin move and the finish with the right hand, he's gotten a couple more of those. He's finishing those. Find the window for the kick out threes, knocking those down, and then next thing you know, you look up and like, Aaron has 26 points in this game. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I feel like this is something that Michael Cage would say, but it's kind of like when you have, your music on in your car.
Yeah.
And you keep the volume the same, but you find that fader and you just kind of fade it up towards the front
a little bit more.
Cage
reference, right?
You know what I mean? It's like it's the same volume, but it's a little bit more prominent, right? It's a little bit more like in your face, and what you're seeing is just a more prominent Aaron Wiggins within the flow of the Thunder's offense, because without AJ Mitchell, without some guys that have been in and out of the lineup, Cason Wallace has missed some time. There's been some great opportunity to use what Aaron Wiggins has built over the course of his time in OKC, which is the system skills plus, right? Aaron has come in from college at Maryland already with some wiggle and some nice bounce off the dribble.
Game, yeah.
But he wasn't always so efficient with that.
Right.
But now that he has really controlled and dominated inside of the Thunder system with the cutting and the screening and the off-ball movement and the catch and shooting, he's now getting some opportunities with the ball in his hand more to kind of get his number called to like, hey, let's run something where Aaron is a central figure in this, where he's creating not just for himself, but to create advantages for the team as well. Those types of dynamics are invigorating to the team too, because it continues to add layers onto what this team is capable of and deliver different pitches to the opponent that they have to prepare for. And they can't just sit on that fastball, as Mark Daigneault likes to say.
As impressive and as fun as it's been to see Aaron and his scoring outbursts recently, it's also been equally as impressive and fun to see his teammates and the reaction from the Thunder faithful. And of course, it's really his teammates that really stands out to me, because J-Dub, after the Thunder's game against the Grizzlies, had some really great things to say about Aaron in terms of, he makes the game easier for us.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best compliment you can give to a teammate and a guy like Aaron, because it goes to your point where Aaron's just doing what Aaron does, right?
Yeah.
It's not more, it's just, it's the same Aaron that the Thunder has always had. A guy that spaces the floor incredibly well. A guy that knows how to cut and move without the ball, which, mind you, can be a very selfless thing, because yes, cutting can sometimes get you an open look, but sometimes cutting just makes you a threat so that somebody else can get an open shot, right? It helps space the floor. He's a great screen setter too. Yeah. He does a great job there. He runs out in transition. Watch when the Thunder get a fast break. Aaron Wiggins slicing up the floor. He's just a blur out in the fast break. So he's doing all of those things. And so when he had that 40-point night against the Sacramento Kings, all of a sudden, people are dumping water all over him. You got water sprayed on you.
That's true.
And it's just like, it's so heartwarming to see all of that. And then you ask Aaron himself, what's been going on, man? Like, what's going on? Great offensive rhythm lately. He put out these big scoring outbursts. And he just says, I'm just playing confidently.
Yeah.
My teammates are finding me. And I'm knocking down shots, and I'm just continuing to find my spots in the system and keep making plays. Nothing different, nothing out of the ordinary.
The only thing he did mention is that he's standing at the free throw line late in that Kings game, and the entire Paycom Center crowd is chanting, Aaron Wiggins. And he's looking around like, what is going on right now? I got to try to finish this game. What am I doing here? So that was obviously a really special moment. But I think also indicative of, like, there are some guys who have a career scoring average of under 10 points per game, like Aaron Wiggins, who, when they have a 41-point night, their head goes into a million different places. It flies into the clouds.
Yeah.
Aaron Wiggins has actually built productively, strategically off of that performance.
Right.
That performance was not like a springboard into more, but hey, this was some really effective stuff that we were able to get to here, that I was able to manufacture for myself and my team. How can that kind of be incorporated with what we're doing as a group?
Yeah.
And so it's been really cool to see Aaron continue to have consistent, efficient scoring games immediately after that, as opposed to sort of this massive firework explosion and then a dud, the next game. I think that's a really strong indicator of what he's going to be capable of down the line.
And last point on Aaron, in the game against the Grizzlies, Aaron had 26 points. He also had 11 rebounds. Yeah. Okay, so he's still doing all of the other things that make Aaron Wiggins. Then you flash forward to the Thunder's game last night against the Pelicans. Aaron had 24, I believe.
Yes. Yep.
3 steals.
Yeah.
So it's just anything that the game needs, Aaron is still there doing Aaron Wiggins things. And that's defending, rebounding, and of course now knocking down some big time shots.
Yeah, and what Mark Daigneault told us after the game is that the underlying story actually is that Aaron's defense has improved throughout the year, and that allows him to be on the floor more in more of these high leverage situations, defending higher caliber players. And that work has been going on under the surface, just like the offensive work has been. And so at this point in his career, mid-20s, Aaron Wiggins, a better, more proficient defender who understands the league at a higher level, which makes him more playable, helps him be out there more to actually carry some of that load, particularly in the second unit offensively.
Great stuff from Aaron Wiggins. It's been so fun to watch him. Excited to see, how he keeps building on this over the course of the rest of this regular season. Now, real quickly, I do want to talk about the Thunder's defense over this month of February, because we talk about it every single podcast. However, it has been the lifeblood of the Thunder and their ability to have these massive scoring nights, because like we mentioned, the Thunder's defense is what buoyed them in the first 4 games of this winning streak to have these double-digit wins, because they weren't necessarily shooting the ball very well.
Right.
But it all comes down to that possession battle. They're just taking the ball from the other team.
That tends to help.
That helps. Yeah. You take a possession from them, you give it to you. Now you add money in the bank on your end. And then next thing you know, you miss your own shot. Oh, you get your offensive rebound. That's an extra possession for you, one less possession for your defender. And so there's just all of these things come together, and the Thunder's defense smothering.
Yeah.
Last night against the Pelicans, which this is, I feel like, a pretty good example, because this season the Thunder has averaged 31 points off turnovers against the Pelicans. That was coming into last night's game. Well, they got 40 points off turnovers against the Pelicans.
How about you double up your season average in one game? That's incredible.
So impressive. But it wasn't just the stats. It was just the energy of the Thunder defense. Now, they were down CJ McCollum. They were led with Zion Williamson. They were led with Trey Murphy III. Yeah. No Brandon Ingram for the Pelicans anymore. And so there were a lot of things that the Pelicans was dealing with. However, the Thunder was still their typical, unrelenting, smothering self, right? The Pelicans had to start their offense, it felt like 6 feet behind the three-point line.
Yeah.
The way the Thunder was just forcing New Orleans to just try to figure out how to initiate their offense, they were having so much trouble. And a lot of the Thunder steals took place right there out front at the top of the key and 5 feet beyond the arc.
Yeah, really, one thing that stood out, and was something that I was talking to Steve Melton, our producer, about, is like basically any handoff at the top of the three-point line was getting completely blown up. And the Thunder talks all the time about the point of attack being this critical juncture that the Thunder has to win. They don't die on screens as they come around screens and jump underneath them. They make sure that they're there in the right spot. They're getting hands in there to deflect the ball and just make things difficult. Every pass was contested right there at that top of the key. And to your point, that's why New Orleans was having to start things much further out, because any closer and the Thunder was really blowing up those actions. Then the next layer was that in those off chances that the Thunder, did get beat slightly and a guy was turning a corner, that's where Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren were there. Jalen Williams, Jay Will there, who took a couple charges in the game, there to defend the interior, really hang at the elbows and just below to make sure that nobody was getting into the restricted area. I think I'd be remiss if we didn't point out.
We got to talk about it. Let's talk about it.
In the first 48 minutes of game action that Chet Holmgren has been back for the Thunder, he has 9 blocked shots.
Yep. He had 5 against the Pelicans, 4 in his first game back, and that was against the Toronto Raptors. Yeah. So incredible stuff by Chet Holmgren. So when you marry the 5 blocks you get from Chet Holmgren against the New Orleans Pelicans with guys like Jalen Williams, who took charges in that game, also had a block. He's a shot blocker as well.
Yes, he is.
Got to give that man his credit.
To make sure everybody knows that. Yes.
Everybody needs to know that. And then you also got Alex Caruso in there taking charges. I mean, you've got offenses seeing ghosts out there, which is the quintessential 6th defender that the Thunder has out there on the floor at any given point. Because if you get past that front line of Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, you're met with Isaiah Hartenstein and Jay Will and Jalen and Chet Holmgren at the rim.
This is the compounding effects that Sam Presti talked about at the beginning of the season. He kind of laid this out as a vision of like, this is what we think this defense can be, that it's one guy handing the baton off to the next guy, to the next guy, to the next guy. And so it's really cool. even though the team isn't totally fully healthy still yet, no
Right.
Kaysen Wallace the other night, no AJ Mitchell.
Mitchell.
We're seeing more and more of these different deployments of the ways in which this team can really add on top of one another.
So ultimately, an incredible start to February where the perfect storm of offense is taking place for the Thunder, marrying its perfect storm of defense, which they've had all season long, putting together some really massively large just numbers in general. The 13.5 offensive rate, or the net rating, says it all right there. All right, let's look ahead real quick because the Thunder has 2 more games until the All-Star break. And let's talk about the All-Star break real fast because there will be a lot of Thunder representation out there in the Bay Area this weekend. You'll see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander there as an All-Star starter for the second straight time, his 3rd All-Star selection. And for the very first time, we will see Jalen Williams, J-Dub, representing Oklahoma City in the Western Conference as an All-Star reserve.
Very happy for J-Dub, thrilled. He still is kind of digesting the fact that he's an All-Star. I tried to ask him a couple questions about it, and he's kind of like, and I really haven't thought about it. I'm sure once I get there, it'll kind of hit me, but he's so focused on, the games that he's got right in front of him that he hasn't really been able to put words to it. And I kind of told him, I was like, I think that's why you're an all-star because you're focused on the game that you have right in front of you as opposed to, what's coming down the line for you and maybe what your visions are. But he always viewed himself as this type of player, even when he was, 5'8", as a freshman in high school, or 6 feet tall when he was graduating from high school. Only once he got into college did he kind of leap up to about 6'6" here, and he's transformed himself into such a dynamic player who's now finally getting a chance to play like small forward shooting guard in some of these lineups for the Thunder, which is really impressive. Just given the fact that he's played so much power forward and center for this team over the course of the season.
A very deserving honor for J-Dub. And that's not it. But wait, there's more because the Thunder have the number 1 record in the Western Conference. That means the Thunder coaching staff will also be out there in the Bay Area as well. Coach Dagnall and the Thunder assistant will be out there in San Francisco coaching the Western Conference All-Stars. Stay tuned for how that formatting will work. I think Coach Dagnall's still figuring all of that out currently. Every time we've asked him, he's like, I'm still learning. I'm still figuring it out.
Speaking of not focused on All-Star Weekend, I think that should be right next to Mark Dagnall's photo when they print out the game programs for All-Star Weekend or whatever they do. Kaysen Wallace was named a rising star. He's dealing with a right shoulder strain, so he will not be participating, but he was given that honor of a rising star. So great to see him honored and recognized like that 2 years in a row.
Yeah, second straight season for Kaysen being honored as a rising star and very deserving. He was having such a tremendous season before he got injured. So the 2 games before the All-Star break, they're going to be some tough ones. The Thunder going up against the Miami Heat, who are coming into Oklahoma City for their one and only trip to Oklahoma City this season. And the Heat, the Thunder played them earlier this season. It was that first game right after the Thunder's trip out to, you remember, Vegas the in-season tournament. And it was just that was a test for Oklahoma City. Going out to Miami, and you're facing a Miami Heat team that is known for its discipline, its creativity, its zone, just a very well-oiled machine led, of course, by Eric Spoelstra.
Yeah, that was a very wild back-to-back that the Thunder played at Orlando and then at Miami, coming right out of that experience in Vegas. I remember distinctly leaving Las Vegas at 10 o'clock in the morning, bright sunshine. And then by the time we landed, it was nighttime in Orlando. It was like 9 p.m. Basically.
Yeah.
I feel like when we walked into the hotel, I was like, what happened
Lost
to that day?
The whole day.
What happened to that day? Great test with Miami coming in. And then the Thunder goes and plays a national TV game in Minnesota on the road on Thursday. Pairs to me, looking at the weather, that seems like a day that I will not be leaving the hotel until it's time to go to the arena.
I will be ordering all of the food to me. I am not going to get the food.
Lots of time for game prep.
A lot of warm beverages while I research stats for that game that evening. But be sure to tune into FanDuel Sports Network for Wednesday's game against the Miami Heat. Me, Nick, Chris Fisher, Michael Cage, Royce Young. We got you covered for that one. And be sure to watch. It'll be a fun one. 2 more games before the All-Star break. But that wraps us up here in this building for this podcast today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much to our producer, Matt Bishop. And until next time, Thunder up and catch you later.